Alrighty, it's coming.
There's always a lag between the actual go live and when you seem to be live before you get the notification.
Right, I think we are live. I'm just going to check to see. So many buttons to push. All right, yes, we are live. All right, we're live. So I'm just going to bring this over here so I can see if there's some questions coming through. I've got quite the setup going on. All right, so hi everybody. We are here live with Cathy Mellett. Have I said that right, Cathy?
Mellett.
Mellett. I am here live with Cathy Mellett. Now, Cathy has worked in technology for a number of years and is the owner of a digital agency. She's also the founder of the I'm Enough Charitable Trust. And this charitable trust is a non-profit organisation dedicated to helping adults, parents and teenagers recognise the impacts of the digital space. Would that be right, Cathy?
That would be absolutely right.
All righty, okay. So I know that, and I mean, I've just taken some of the stuff off of the I'm Enough page, in that you've seen communication change over, years, and the introduction of new technologies and social tools which continue to impact the way that we communicate with each other. And I know that I've spoken to you about the huge positives in embracing the online space, but with the acceptance that it also comes with downsides, that nothing is perfect, and that I really wanted to get on and talk to you about developing some of these personal strategies that I know you speak about to be able to cope in this space. So welcome, Cathy.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything that you would like to add to that little introduction about who you are and what's brought you to be doing what you're doing at the moment today?
I think that everything in your past actually leads to where you are today. And one of the elements that obviously is not on my bio is that I'm also a mum. And so I sit in that space of understanding technology and also then obviously parenting children in that space, and not only my own kids, but actually being exposed to some of the extended circle of children that I'm close to. And so, yeah, it's an important space, and I think it's a space that we as parents need to embrace. And the reason that I say that we need to embrace it is because so often we receive a notice and we get an invite to the school, and the school says, come and listen to a digital evening. And off we go. And then we come back to our little Johnny and we go, this environment is bad and I'm going to take it away from you. And all that does is it creates a huge barrier between us and our children. And so I think that, as you said, there's positive and negative, and I'm going to use lovely Mandy Beverly's phrase, there's positive and negative in everything. And you can't have the positive without the negative, but it's about how we as parents and our children work together to make this a space that can be used for their protection and for their enhancement and for their enjoyment, rather than for all the other things, being bullied, feeling a failure, and so many other rafts of emotions that they may go through.
Yes, I'm totally hearing this, and I guess one thing that I want to touch on with what you've said is, I mean, I used to have a whole lot of charge around screens. It would, I'd get seriously triggered when my kids would even ask me whether they could go on the screen. So, and I know that this is the case for a lot of the parents that I work with and a lot of the parents that I hear from. So I guess how would you suggest that we begin as parents to start to lose that charge, and what's the benefit? What's the benefit going to be if we can work through that?
I think that losing the charge probably also means we have to lose the charge, because at some points in time, and I recall so clearly walking past my local cafe, and there was a mum with her toddler she was having a latte or a cappuccino, whatever the coffee was, and the kid was having a fluffy. And the mother was on its device. And I thought, you know, there we are, you know, parents can also be digitally distracted. So it's about putting parameters around it, having some parameters in your house potentially. You know, we don't do devices at dinner time. We put all our devices away at 8 o'clock at night. Whatever works for your family, because each family is very different. You can set up a time limit on when your kids can have access. And I know some parents that I've worked with have used some technologies to do that. So there's no easy solution for every single household. And obviously, tomorrow we move down to level 2 of lockdown. And I will say that technology has had a very powerful role, a positive role potentially, although there have been some things as well, in our children still connecting with one another. And as we think about that connection's not always good, because we need real life connections. And one of our sponsors and supporters is Fran Bryn, and she always talks about the I heart moment. And that's one of the things that our kids need to learn, is I heart is part of one of those fundamental elements of what makes us feel like we belong, what makes us feel like we belong to a community. And if we're not getting that, and sometimes we don't get that through the online environment, then we have one element of what makes us whole missing. So come back to answer your question. I think every family needs to take the power and make some decisions around their own family as to what works with them, for them, but not put the fear factor into all of it, rather open up the channels of communication.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And I think because you sort of touched on ways of controlling, you know, what our kids are seeing. You know, and I know that there's these kind of blocker programs and, you know, tracker programs and parental control programs, and it kind of brings me to the point of, and I know we discussed this when we first got together in our conversation, and when I named this this interview, you know, how to keep kids safe online. And what you immediately kind of directed our conversation into was resilience, you know, was resilience online. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is, as I was talking to a girlfriend of mine, and she said that she downloaded the program or bought the program from the school, and the kids know how to disable it. You know, they know how to disable the program. So it's like, well, the program's irrelevant. The program's not doing what it needs to be doing, because, you know, let's face it, our kids are pretty smart. They're pretty quick around technology. So, you know, could you talk to me a little bit, and the audience that's watching, around resilience and what that means around these conversations that you're talking about opening up with our kids?
And absolutely, I think resilience is at the very core of everything. And as you said, I run a digital agency. And where did I'm Enough come from? I'm Enough actually came from the fact that I was a mum and I ran a digital agency, and I was approached by other parents who were saying to me, what do I do? How do I deal with this? I think my child's connecting with people that are not, you know, proper profiles. And it turned out that there was some pedophile environments that the child had unwittingly got themselves into, or you know, connecting with somebody online that they think is a friend, and then they land up somewhere that they shouldn't. So I was exposed to so much of that, and then went offshore, because I do go offshore to come back with technology for my own business. And I realized that in the role of our teens, and in the role of social media, the influencer is the wannabe status. You know, they want to be the cute kid that's the influencer. They want to be the cute kid with all the likes. They want to be the cute kids with all the views. They want to be the TikTok experience that is getting the maximum amount of traction. And so when that traction does not happen, or when they perceive that they're not being accepted in that environment, that's when the self-doubt comes in. And if we actually look at that self-doubt and we look at some of the stats, you know, 1 in 5 children in New Zealand have got a mental health problem. And besides that, we're actually looking at a 200% increase in the suicide rates of our youth. That's children between the ages of 10 and 14. And what can we do about that? And the thing that we decided as a team is that if we actually believe that I'm enough, and we have an internal ability to be resilient of, I can walk away from the bully, I can shut that off, I don't need to create self-esteem around my likes and around my views, then we stand in a better place. So resilience is absolutely the best place to start. But resilience isn't only built in an online environment. You know, if we think about, and I remember going to a talk by Celia Lashley, you know, when she was still doing the rounds. And the thing that stuck with me that Celia's shared was, often with our children, we will protect them. Don't climb the tree. Be careful when you go outside. You know, don't walk too fast. Don't run too fast. Don't. And yet, the first time our children learn action versus consequences is when we place them in a vehicle. Well, that was what she said. And I think it's true. We need to allow our children to experience life. They need to experience failure. They need to climb back up again. And we as parents should be able to support them along the way. And one of our hashtags with I'm Enough is start the conversation. You know, just sit down with your children and have those conversations around how important are likes to them? How important is the amount of friends that they have on social media? Have they been bullied in the environment? What would happen if they are bullied? Who would they turn to? And, you know, if we're also looking at some children with disability, because that's the other thing that I've often been asked is, how do you support children with disabilities? And the thought that I've always got around that is to ensure that they've got a buddy that lives in that environment with them. So not only in the real world, but also in the online world where perhaps they can get taken advantage of because of circumstance. So resilience is absolutely at the core, but I think at the core as well is that self-belief that they're enough, not entitled, but they're enough.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such great content here, because I totally understand about, you know, the kind of way that a lot of parents will wrap their kids in cotton wool, you know, and they're not having these challenges and these experiences of really testing resilience, you know, really giving them an opportunity to. And
it was really interesting. I stumbled across a phraseology the other day and I went, wow, it was one of those eye-opening moments where when we were growing up, we were sent out into the bush or sent out down the road or sent to the park, and we were told to be back when the either got dark or when a mother shouted over the fence that we had to come home. Yet in today's world, we are, be careful when you cross the road. Be careful of the stranger when you go to the park. Be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful. And actually, sometimes as parents, we almost feel more in control of our children's safety when we bring them inside and we can see them.
Yes, and I think I recall when we spoke earlier and we were talking about this, and it was like, gosh, I remember, you know, back in my childhood when we spent all our time outdoors and we were always out climbing and riding and playing and in the street, and it was a punishment to be inside, you know. Oh, you're grounded, or, you know, no, you can't go out and play today, you know, Jimmy can't come and play today because he's, you know, behavior blah blah blah, whatever it was. And it's almost like now it's reversed, you know. It's like, you know, you've been on the screens too long, you have to go outside and play. And it's completely, it's completely the other side of the spectrum. And I find, it really interesting around the fear, which is what you're talking into.
Yeah, and again, it also comes back to that level of anxiety, because you know that when you speak to doctors and doctors are saying to you, sometimes children actually have a level of anxiety when they head out to do certain things because they're indoors. And then we come back to the positive and negative, the balance of technology is here. They are going to form those online relationships. As parents, start understanding that environment and start having conversations within that environment. And another thing that I often comment on is that as parents, we've got a huge amount to give. We need to take that for ourselves and believe we've got a lot to give. We've got experiences, maybe not always in the digital world. We've got an understanding. We've got a sense of community. We have a sense of what relationships look like. All of those things are so important. Yet when it comes to the digital world, we often say to our kids, you know more about it than we do. And so at that very point in time, I think we also hand power over to our kids, because they then think that they can pull the wool over our eyes in those environments. But if we are also just having a look around and we've got a Facebook page and we've got a Snapchat account and we've got a few of those accounts that we're in and out of, we will start having a different form of language that we can be using with our children and take back that power so that you can parent them in that environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And what I'm remembering as you're talking is a book called Playful Parenting, and I was reading it. One of the sections was play the games you hate, and I think that it comes into this so beautifully, because I remember, my boys love to play on video games, and they love to do that. And I remember also hearing another parent saying that they really didn't like it and that they would avoid it at all costs. I remember once joining my son and, coming in alongside him and asking him what he was doing. And he was playing a game with his friend who lived quite far away. And the two of them got into the car in the game and they drove off together. And I just thought, wow, that's so cool. We never had the opportunity to do that when we were kids. And it's that kind of embracing it and, sort of meeting them in the world that they're in, and I think that's a part of this, to be able to not only have an idea of what's going on, but also to be able to meet them in their world and say, oh, wow, I get that. I saw you doing that. And I'm able to engage with you at a level which, makes them feel seen.
And as you're actually looking at that environment, it's also really important that you have a discussion about that environment. So when you're looking at the game with them, can you see why that is potentially not real? Can you see why that is potentially not a good thing to be watching? Can you see why that could harm people? Can you see why that's actually not the real world? So that there's a big understanding of what the environments are that they're in, and that you're having those conversations with them around that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I was talking to a client a couple of days ago who had been watching a film, just a movie on Netflix with her kids, and it was rated a 7+, I think, and her little guy is 8.5, I think he was, and ended up in absolute tears over this film, which was a Roald Dahl film. I think it was The Witches, if I remember rightly. And there's a scene in the film where they're taking off the masks and becoming the witches, and it absolutely frightened the pants off this little guy. But I guess the beauty of that with what I'm hearing you say is that it actually opened up the opportunity to have a really, really good conversation around, well, what did that feel like for you? She was opening up the conversation with her son. What did that feel like for you in your body? You know, how did that feel when you saw that? And just really sort of helping them, obviously, with what you're saying, is to become more resilient around how it actually makes them feel. And you know,
and also, if they felt like that, did they have to continue to watch it? You know, they've got the power. They can make a choice as to whether they want to watch it or if they want to turn it off and walk away. They don't actually have to be exposed to that if they choose not to. And you know, we shouldn't also be naive that we think that our children don't have access to the, you know, the 4-letter word, and let's actually go there, the porn word, because it's online. And we spoke about some of my technology background many years ago. That's something that I was involved with, which was content security. And I'm well aware that there are places online that spell things in a way that little kids can actually get to them. You know, when little Johnny's learning to spell abasa kada, and that's how they stumble upon them. And so, you know, have that conversation about what do you do when you get to a site where there's things that we as a family don't want to see, or that we as a family don't believe that is right for our family. Because, you know, I remember Sonia, who's the CEO of I'm Enough, and she was busy chatting to her mum, and her daughter or son had gone off to a party and come back absolutely hooked on porn, because that 10-year-old had been exposed to that at that party. And so, you know, let's also not assume that what happens in our house happens in other houses, because every house is different. And ensuring that our children, you know, even with separated families, what could be happening at mum and dad's house or the other mum and dad's house can be different. But again, we go back, open that conversation, have that conversation. And probably some of the important conversations to have are around porn and body image. The other important conversations to be having is around the example, if you're not feeling comfortable with seeing something, should you watch it and continue to be exposed to it, or can you walk away from it? But then the third one is, how do you actually handle when a friend of yours is online and they say they want to self-harm? And you know, one of the things that I've learned in my I'm Enough journey is that self-harm is something that a tween and a teen will probably talk to another tween and teen about. It's very seldom something that they will go to a parent. And actually, if you look at some of my collateral online, that was actually the moment that my head went like that, when I walked into my own child's bedroom and I said to him, come to dinner. And he said to me, I can't. And I said, why can't you come to dinner? And he said, because I'm helping a friend who wants to take her life. And I looked at him and he was 12. And I thought, what skills does a 12-year-old have in that situation? And have I, as a parent, prepared him for that? And we're allowing people into our children's lives in our homes on a regular basis. So that resilience word comes back. You know, give them the coping strategies to be able to deal with real life situations that we as parents have the ability to deal with.
Yeah, because I mean, we're dealing with so many different other situations that we never had to deal with as children, you know, those sorts of events, sorts of experiences. And you know, and I think it's kind of a naivety, I guess, to think that our children aren't being exposed to this sort of thing. And I know for me as an early parent, you know, it really played with my perfectionism and my kind of controlling, you know, kind of way of being, of wanting to micromanage everything and protect and, you know, keep everybody safe. And as I said earlier in this interview around, you know, the fact around keeping our kids safe is actually counterintuitive, you know, whereas we know that our children are going to be exposed to so much more than we ever were. So how do we open these conversations with, you know, with honesty and transparency and love, and especially when they're conversations that we were probably never involved in with our own parents. You know, I know that, you know, that a lot of the parents that I talk to, you know, sex wasn't even something that was discussed, and it was through peers, conversations with peers, and now obviously online, that they were starting to learn about what sex was, you know, not even branching into porn. So I think it's so good to open these conversations up in space so that we can invite the parents to, you know, to start opening the conversations with each other, and then, you know, bringing them to their children. And I guess my question would be for you, Cathy, is like, if these conversations are challenging, because I know they're going to be challenging for a lot of parents, you know, how is the best way for them to even start to broach these subjects if, you know, if their children are a lot smaller at the moment, they know they've got this coming, or they've already got teens and tweens, and they're, you know, feeling really challenged on how to broach these subjects.
Trust yourself. Trust yourself. And some of the easiest conversations I've had with my kids is when I'm driving a car and I don't have to look at them. Because, you know, you don't have to evaluate what the expressions are, but no, trust yourself. And sometimes actually, you know, throw the names out there. You know, one of the things is, and I don't even know if I should be using the words in this forum, but, you know, the self pictures that they take to actually send to the girlfriend or the boyfriend, or, and, you know, kids are doing it. And talk about the consequence of doing something like that. So those are not easy conversations to have, but you know what, if you're actually there and you go, you know, let's just have a chat.
Yeah,
I know that this is a reality, but why don't we think about the consequences? Or, you know, you've just told me that your friend Johnny has just done XYZ. What are the consequences? Do you think it was a good decision? Do you think it was a bad decision? And what happens if those pictures get out of hand or land up somewhere else? You know, what happens? And so just be open and honest, and go with the conversation, and even acknowledge, I'm uncomfortable having this conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's beautiful. It's like, I mean, I know for me that when I start to converse and you know, about subjects which I definitely weren't part of my own childhood, it's the normalization. You know, it's just like kind of just dropping it into the conversation with, you know, oh, this is like we're talking about the weather, or, you know, we're talking about going to the beach, and that just really supports me. And I think you're absolutely right about doing it while you're in the car and you're driving. And the other thing is that they can't go anywhere. They can't go. I was moving, and I mean, you know, that might be trickier than you know, looking at it the other way. But I think the normalization for me has just brought so many opportunities and such an ease in talking about it. And we talk about anything and everything. And you know, my kids are really great around being able to do that, because I know that the energy that I'm bringing to it is of that normalization and of my experience also. It's like, oh wow, when I was a kid, and you know, and I'll have my brother talk to my boys also, you know, because he's an uncle, he's a different man than their dad, you know, give this different opinion, different experience, different way of seeing things, which I think is a big part of this. Because you know, with resilience is, and it brings me back to what you said earlier about, we don't know what's going on in other people's houses. We don't know what their rules and boundaries are. So, you know, instilling a resilience in our children gives them ways to be able to navigate that, so that when they are at Jimmy's house, or, you know, Tommy's house, or whoever's house, they're still really strong in what's important in their family values, knowing that everybody is.
And the other thing, if you really also think, we go back to the, you know, the original way that we grew up, and then you look at the way that our kids are growing up, communities have changed. You know, communities have changed where if you probably were climbing out the back window, Joan from the back fence would be calling your mother and going, do you know your daughter's just climbed out the back window? We don't tend to do that as communities anymore. And I would be open to anyone coming to tell me anything that they believe that I needed to know. The one thing that I always say, that if you as a parent, and this is probably a tip, if you are involved in anything where you maybe do feel that you are going to have that discussion with another parent, is back it up with some facts. So, you know, if you believe that the child is being bullied online and you've seen evidence to it, back it up with some facts, get some screenshots, so that when you are having those conversations, you also have the information to share, because that information can support the story. And to come, again, people will say, because we started, you know, resilience online and how to keep safe online, a few things that you can do, some that will cost and some won't cost. So if we think about our phones, a lot of our phones have got meters as to how long you're online with, for set up boundaries, you know, depending on the age. How long can you use your device for? So that's one way that you could leave the device, but still have a nightly check-in to see how long the device has been used for. The second thing that in my home we have is a device that actually monitors internet traffic. And so I can see bandwidths and levels of communication and pie charts as to where the time has been spent. Now, no one can then argue with a pie chart that actually shows social media at 75% and Google at 25%, and then you tell me you've been studying or working or something. So there are some tools that you can put on your stream of bandwidth in and out that will give you an idea as to what they're using. As they now sort of heading into the upper teens, call it the snitch bitch. But I've used that before. And then we've also got something which is called Our Pact. And Our Pact can be downloaded onto a phone, and it also allows you to set times that children can be online for. And again, that's discussed. You know, when would you like to have your phone? When are you going to have a break? When do you want to study? And for those little ones, obviously it's easier to provide structure and boundaries around when they do have those devices, because it's and I printed it off, that an hour a day of staring at a screen can actually be enough to make a child depressed. So you really want to be trying to minimize that, but also preschoolers or under fives who are high users of technology can also be twice as likely to lose their temper, because they've actually not, probably in my humble opinion, had an ability to just let off some of the stuff that they've been exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I remember reading a blog a couple of years ago, and I remember this woman saying that, you know, her children just turned into little monsters, you know, and she really noticed it. And the moment she just took away all the screens, you know, took away all the devices, and her children came back. So, you know, I understand that side of it. And then I also understand that we've been in the middle of a lockdown, and, you know, there's been parents who are struggling these completely different circumstances of working sometimes full-time with both parents, and then, you know, suddenly they're homeschool parents as well, and the kids are at home all the time. And I feel there's a real piece and offering to parents that, you know, these circumstances are far from anybody's normal, and you know, and to sort of how to be okay in the situation, you know, knowing that it is a very different set of circumstances. So I guess, Cathy, what would you say about that in terms of, you know, allowing parents to kind of not get too, you know, caught up in the stats, but also keeping that in mind as they're moving forward as well?
Look, none of us have got it right. We all are learning as we go. And again, we come back to do what's right for your family. But, you know, teach your children that they're enough. Teach your children that it's cool to care, but you will always be the backstop for them if they need to turn to an adult. And then also teach them that to be kind to one another online, because again, in the past, you could escape the bully at the school gate. Now that bully can actually follow you into the bedroom. And it's about putting the boundaries in place, that they know what actions they can take if that happens. But also acknowledging, whether it be us or our kids, that we legislate a lot of things. You know, we legislate the age of alcohol. We legislate gambling. We legislate the access to cigarettes. But the one thing that no one has legislated, although there's ages around Facebook, but we haven't legislated access to games, gaming technologies, the social media platforms, because our children have access to it. And those have the same levels of dopamine hits that some of the other environments actually have as well. So it's about forming that balance. And again, I come back to, you know, we won't always have it right. We won't always have the answers. But you know what? If we're trying our best and we're in there having those conversations, and our children know that we are that safe haven and that port of call that they can come to never be judged in whatever they're sharing with us, then I think we've had success.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think there's such beauty in that, of, you know, just being real with the kids. I mean, I remember playing a game. I think it was the Angry Birds game, and I remember I was getting pulled into it, and I was like, "Oh, just give us another go, you know, give us another go." And what that opened up was a beautiful conversation around the draw, you know, that some of these games have, and it of course it brings us back to those conversations around how it makes you feel, and also the resilience. I mean, I was noticing online with one of the YouTuber guys that my boy watches, and some of the games that he plays. And as you say, the games are restricted, you know, well, some of them are and some of them aren't, but they still have access to it, and they still have access to YouTubers playing it, you know. And then I was looking at it, and then this YouTuber had put, this is a kid-friendly video, you know, family-friendly video, and I'm like, dude, this is like Grand Theft Auto, you know. And I because I just wanted to see what was out there, what was available, what is accessible for our kids out there. And you know, the controls and things, a lot of this isn't going to be picked up. So these conversations and you know, words around resilience and around, you know, opening up these conversations so that they can come to us as you know, as their support people.
And I don't know why I feel like I need to share this, Jackie, but and I wasn't intending to share this, nor had I thought this before, but you know, sometimes parents themselves may not be in a place where they have the energy or the capability to do something about it right now. It could all just be, you know, they might be going through their own set of turmoil. And so if they're in that space, maybe they can turn to somebody else and ask that somebody else to come in around their children for a wee while whilst they regroup. And there's no harm in them doing that either, because again, we all need those trusted people around us that can support us.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful, because as you say, you know, we don't always have all of the answers. And I know that when I start speaking to other parents and other adults, getting their different versions and their different views, and you know, ways of that they're navigating their situations with their families. And there's so much gold to be had there when we can come into those conversations not from a I'm right, you're wrong position, from that space of, oh wow, we're all learning, we're all navigating these new spaces together, you know, what's working for you, I'm struggling with this bit, and really opening up those conversations to support each other in those spaces. So absolutely agree. Yeah, absolutely agree. Beautiful. And so is there any other tips, Cathy, that you would give the parents out there that are watching and that are going to catch up on the replay around this online space and how best to support our kids around, if there's anything that you think we've missed that you could add.
I probably think the only thing that, and probably not for the tweens and the teens, but certainly for our little people, is the element of stranger danger. One of the things that we all pretty hot on is the, be careful of the stranger, don't take lollies from the stranger, don't talk to a strange person at the park, but actually to also potentially extend that conversation into the online world. That you might be playing a game with someone, but is that person really who you think they are? Or are they also an emoji, or they also a character that's been created, and there could be somebody else behind that character? And so would you allow anyone, and simple conversations like, would you allow anyone into your home? Well, no. So therefore, would you share your information with people when you actually don't know who's behind that character? So to actually start having differing stranger danger type conversations with our younger ones, I think that's the only thing we haven't really spoken about.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I think that's really, really valid. And I think, again, it brings me back to those questions of helping our children just feel, did that feel okay? How did that comment make you feel when you really felt into yourself? And I know I'm just recalling an experience that I went through with my boys when my older boy was a bit younger, and he'd heard about a game, at school, and he said, oh, I want to play it. And so we kind of went on YouTube and, had a little look at a video of it, and we both watched it. And I turned to him and he turned to me, and we both said, I feel a bit yuck. And I feel a bit yuck too. And I'm like, okay, so, really sort of, okay, how did that feel? I think those sorts of conversations to really enable our kids to start to use their intuitiveness and their sixth sense, not just.
And also, irrespective of where they are, and I know that a wide circle of online connection is highly sought after. But it was really interesting. One of our young supporters, for a school project, what she did was she went about creating a fake profile. And then she went through the school and she connected with people in the school. And she started to create a little bit of drama, and people started to engage with her. And at the end of the period, she actually came out, I think it was in the assembly, where she said, you all allowed me in. No one knew who I was. And at the end of the day, I knew where you lived. I knew what school you went to. I knew things about your life. But actually, the person you were sharing all of that with wasn't real.
Yeah.
And I think that was an eye-opener for that particular school at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just, simply using the avatar, explaining what the avatar is. And, I know sort of lots of games and apps that you can go on and create your own avatar. And that could be the opening to those conversations, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
There is so much to talk about, but at the end, the charity is called I'm Enough, and with resilience and a self-belief that they're enough. And again, I come back to not entitled, but enough. I think we'll make some headway.
Yeah. Thank you, Cathy, for your wisdom. Thank you for your gifts. Thank you for joining me on this interview series and sharing what you've experienced, sharing what you're seeing out there in the world in terms of the online space, in terms of what you're noticing and experiencing in terms of parents and teens and tweens and, people navigating this digital world that we're all a part of. So I would love to put your details underneath so that if anybody wants to get into contact with the I'm Enough Charitable Trust. And apart from that, I just really want to thank you for joining me on this interview. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this one up, everybody. It's been an incredible interview with Cathy this evening, and on Saturday, I just wanted to do a little intro for the next panel we've got. We've got Linda Moore joining us on Saturday afternoon at 5, and we're going to be talking about kids, lockdown, and money. So we're going to cover off the first conversation around the financial implications, the financial piece around this lockdown that we're all in, and how we're being impacted on the money side of things. So really looking forward to having you all here on Saturday at 5. And saying again, thank you, Cathy. Thank you for everyone that's joined. I can see some comments from everyone that's talking about our devices. I can see a message from Annalise, point about stranger danger online. Yes, for the older ones, keeping little ones off devices gets around pretty quick. Yeah, good one. Yes, so there's a lot of really, really good comments and people watching. I see Sonia's here as well. Children are enough. Yes, yes, yes. So, yep, there's been some beautiful comments on just sort of, you know, big thumbs up and big hearts for what we've been talking about and what we've been opening up in this space. So thank you, everybody who was watching. Thank you, Cathy, for joining me. And we're going to wrap this one up and we're going to shut this live down. Alrighty. Thank you, everybody.